morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks on Wednesday, the 28th day of August, year of our Lord 2019. Welcome to the John Moore Show. We begin our shows with the Pledge of Allegiance, which is very controversial in some areas, believe it or not. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Purpose tip of the day, it's a book. It relates to the work I've been doing for quite a few years. Here's the title of the book. I'll say the title of the book and the author twice slowly. A Little Ice Age Has Started. The author is Lawrence Pierce. I say again, the title of the book is A Little Ice Age Has Started. The author is Mr. Lawrence Pierce, available at Amazon.com and probably your local bookseller. We have patient waiting in the green room, my friend, Professor James McCanney. Professor McCanney taught astrophysics at Cornell University. He taught mathematics at Cornell University. He's the author of now, I believe, 11 books, with I'm sure more on the way. Weekly radio talk show host and advanced amateur archaeologist. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, John.
Well, sir, lots going on in the news, as always. What's at the top of your radar?
Well, this is a really interesting one this week. There apparently, and we don't know this, Trump denies it. He denies he said this, but there was a quip that was related from a national security meeting in which Trump, of course, being president, partake, and claiming that he said that we should nuke hurricanes, which is interesting because there's one forming right now in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean that might already devastated Puerto Rico, and then they're saying it might be in the United States someplace down the southeast by the holiday weekend coming up. So that's kind of strange, but the quip was that Trump said, why don't we blow off a nuclear bomb, blow a hurricane apart? So this has bounced around the news media and with all of the hacks and the news people and people trying to attack Trump like he was Barry Goldwater going to, they did with Barry Goldwater, make him into a nutcase. But anyway, the point is how poorly informed the president is on issues of, in this case, national security in a sense. We've had hurricanes. Under his watch, we've had many big hurricanes like Michael coming in Florida, which went from a Category 1 to Category 5 hurricane in 3 hours, which is impossible. So, and then to imagine his somebody actually writing this down and passing it to the news media is another whole issue. But the idea that nobody up in that upper echelon of science understands what a hurricane is, and that my work, which has been around since, in terms of presidents knowing it, since the mid-1990s, how poorly informed our president is.
Well, the deep state most likely conceals things from these presidents. These presidents come and go every 4 to 8 years. The deep state, I'll give you an example. I have a neighbor who recently retired. When I say recently, about 6 or 8 years ago, retired from doing clerical work, administrative work in Washington, D.C. She began work there during the Eisenhower administration. And that's not unusual. These men and women stay there for decades and decades, and that is the deep state, isn't it, Jim?
Well, partly, but it sounds like these people are just like people that have a task and they push papers or they do whatever they do. They don't have any administrative ability. The problem is you get people in like NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or say like the Hurricane Prediction Center, a bunch of these are real hacks, that this whole thing should have been disbanded when Dr. Gray and his assistant quit. This was many years ago. They quit basically stating that nothing that this group is doing has any scientific validity at all in predicting hurricanes. And their hurricane is a joke. A hurricane prediction scheme is a joke. They have a computer model that has nothing to do with hurricanes. And, this is our national supported center for hurricanes. What they're talking about is something in the middle of the Pacific Ocean affecting Atlantic hurricanes, which is absurd. Everything they're doing is just goofy, off the wall. But back to the main issue that, the president, and on key issues, and you can talk to people who've been in security positions, and the 12 people that surround him in a real security meeting, generals and high brass from the military, are really in a lot of cases, maybe they're experts in their region, but then you get it off into something like weather, and they have no clue. And in the military, you would think that they would understand weather, because that's going to affect any military operations from the very beginning, and not understand that hurricanes are being manipulated with laser satellites, which the United States built and launched, and that you can control hurricanes, you can minimize their effect, you can guide them away from land. And this information, they're talking about putting a nuclear bomb in a hurricane, which is absolutely absurd. But the point of if Trump said something like that, he was just looking for a way. He said, "Yeah, can't we do something? Like put a nuclear bomb in it." It's just a comment. So it's not like he was going to do that. It was just like using an example. But back to the point, how poorly informed this guy is on major issues.
Well, that's unfortunate, and I know he's doing the best he can given his capability, but it is unfortunate. You want to move on from there, Jim?
Sure. What do you got on your side of the table there?
Well, the Congress goes back into session the 9th of September, so that's typically when all the Congress critters start getting in front of cameras and making, especially the Democrats, making outrageous statements. I know here in Missouri, we've had some issues with children being shot to death by stray bullets, and the mayor of St. Louis, whose husband was shot in a random street crime, she wants the Missouri legislature to pass some law that will cause criminals to not be criminals anymore, which is, I'm using my terminology, of course, which is, of course, a fantasy. And the Missouri, I believe the Speaker of the House basically said, look what they've done in Chicago. You could not have any more restrictive laws than they got in Chicago, and it's off the charts crazy, the people being murdered there every day. So that will be an issue also. Missouri has what they call the veto session for their state legislature coming up in the next few days. And the socialists, Democrats, Muslims, communists are disappointed that there will be no anti-gun agenda on the table to be dealt with in Jefferson City, the capital of Missouri. So that's going on in Missouri. Also, we had a federal judge overrule part of a Missouri law banning abortions once the child has reached 8 weeks old, but keeping in place the part that bans abortions because of race or sex or other things. So I guess that's a small win. And the Missouri Attorney General is looking at options right now to get back to where we want to be in Missouri, which is to stop abortions altogether. So that's what I'm looking at, Jim.
Well, yeah, the liberal agenda is really insane. Just on the first point, it turns out that in San Francisco and other Western California cities that have turned into just absolute pits, they have decriminalized a lot of issues so that they can say there's no crime in their city. And that's the point, is the crime is off the chart. And so they're finding new creative liberal terms for criminals. Or like youth would be called them socially affected people. And in other words, this was society's fault, not the fault of the person committing the crime. And then people who would be victims would be also called the same. So the point is that you're the victim, and the perpetrator of the crime would then be classified as the same, as some kind of just a result of society, and nothing and no punishment. And the reason they're doing it is because they want to eliminate the ability to talk about the crime levels in their city. In fact, some of them have outlawed talking about the crime level, that you can't publish it in the paper. That's, that's the level.
That will not stand up to a court challenge for a minute. That will collapse under any kind of court challenge. Well, up in Seattle, Jim, the judge at the courthouse there in downtown Seattle asked the city to power wash around the courthouse because there's so much urine and feces around, human feces. And the Seattle city councilman said, no, you can't do that because using a hose or a power washer is racist. And so they're not going to wash the feces and the urine from around the courthouse because using the hose would be racist.
Did you get the connection there, or I'm missing that one?
Is, in the riots of the 1960s, fire hoses were used against black people, so that's why it's racist. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, I don't know what they put in the water up there in Seattle, but there is certainly a disconnect with reality, in my opinion.
Well, what happened there, though, is all the people from California moved up there to get away from California, and they brought their liberal mental disorder with them.
Yep.
And
well, my daughter is a native-born, I should say, a native Seattle person, and she tells me that most of the Seattle natives are just sick and tired of Californians coming up there and Californicating the Washington state. It was a fairly normal state before the Californians came up there and Californicated the state.
Yeah. And then they move on. Once they've destroyed a place, then they move on to other places.
Like Montana.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we had an expression in Minnesota that it was the winter kept the riffraff out, because the people couldn't manage the cold weather. So you don't find them moving to Minnesota. They can get to Denver because Denver's not that bad as far as winter is concerned. That makes me wonder how people from the heated part of Africa, Somalia, ended up in some of the most brutal winters on the face of the earth, at least especially in the United States and Minnesota. I can imagine a Somalian, the first winter in Minnesota, thinking, was it such a good idea to come here in the first place? Well, yeah, but they had no choice. They were put there. They were brought there and dumped off, and that's what goes on. But they don't go outside. They don't do anything. They don't go and enjoy the winter as local people do. They just stay inside.
I bet they do.
and they probably turn the heat up to 90.
And we're paying for it.
Yeah, and you're paying for it.
There was a widely publicized photograph in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch newspaper 30-something years ago. A young Caucasian male adult was installing some film over a window to help insulate the house against the cold weather, while a young adult black male about the same age was sitting on a couch watching the volunteer install the plastic over the window. That received a lot of notoriety around St. Louis.
And I'm missing this. What's going on?
Well, we have two adult males, one Caucasian, one black. The volunteer has volunteered to go into the home of the black male and install the plastic over the window, while the black male resident sits there and watches.
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's racist. Would that be racist?
Most likely. I mean, almost everything's racist these days. It seems like it's astounding the things that get called racist now. Using a hose to clean up urine and feces is racist. It's it's hard to comprehend what's taking place here in the public domain, in the public square, in terms of civil conversation has become so bizarre.
Yeah, it's really true, and that should be the bigger point, that the things that are being bounced around are, absolutely crazy. Like the Electoral College is racist. There's nothing racist about the Electoral College at all. It has nothing racist about it. It does not. It does not favor anybody.
It has a purpose. That is to stop the United States from becoming a democracy. That's the purpose of the Electoral College, is to stop us from becoming a democracy, which we are not. We are a constitutional republic.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and the point is very simple. In all the analysis I see, they never really talk about the point that stuffing the ballot box in one or two spots, if you can get some key people to stuff the ballot box, those few key people can continually turn an election and therefore run away with the country in short order. And once they do, then you've lost your country. And so and that's what happened. It's been happening. In fact, in my analysis for the election fraud, I came up with the fact that there are people in Congress who've never won their seat by a fair election. It's always been by manipulation, and probably if there were a fair election, they probably would have never been in Congress in the first place. So we have people who have professional lives depend on illegal elections.
That's right. Hold that thought. We got a break. Call numbers 800-313-9443. We're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday. It is Wednesday, the 28th of August. We're going on a cruise. It will be a fun time. It will be a romantic time if you choose it to be. Valentine's Day falls right in the middle of the cruise. We're leaving Florida Saturday, the 9th day of February, returning a week later on the 16th. All the details are at my website at thelibertyman.com. Leon Green will be with us. We're going to be joined by some other notable people to be announced. If you don't have internet access, you want our cruise director, Betsy Murphy, to mail you a nice full-color flyer, just give Betsy a call at 636-530-9502. I say again, Betsy Murphy, our cruise director, her telephone is 636-530-9502. I hope you can join us. It'll be a lot of fun. Visiting Professor James McCanney, his website's linked to my links page at thelibertyman.com. Jim, you've got not one but two weekly radio shows. Tell us about how people can listen live and to the archives, if you would, please, sir.
John, every Thursday evening, 6 p.m. Central Time from WWCR, Nashville, Tennessee, the James McCanney Science Hour at the Crossroads airs, and then also that re-airs about 10 times in different venues. So all of that information on my webpage, and then also the weekly paid cast is $3.95 a month for extra deep dive into scientific topics. And right now I have my education course, a 100-week program, in other words, 100 sessions, that is designed for preschool, K-12, and university, and then along with all of the other paid casts that go back now 3 years I've been doing the paid cast. So there's a lot of material there, and that's available on my webpage. So That's the two different shows. All of that available access on my webpage.
Okay, we got some good news, a bit of sanity returning to education. The College Board last May said they were going to add something called the adversity score to the SAT testing. That's been dropped, Jim. I'm sure you recall that. It was kind of a bizarre thing that they wanted to add to the SAT testing, but they have dropped that. I guess the pushback got to be too much, wasn't it?
The adversity, what's this now?
Adversity score. You must have been in a jungle looking for some ruins.
I have been, yeah.
When this happened. Last May, the College Board announced they were going to add an adversity score, a score ranging from 1 to 100 based on students' social and economic background.
I see.
So if you came from a poor family in a bad neighborhood, your adversity score would be higher, and that would give you an edge in the SAT test.
Well, I'll tell you, I came from what you might consider a very poor background, and I did very good. That's before people studied for it. That's before people had all kinds of advantages in preparing for these kind of tests. So if you want to study and do well, you can do that in spite of the fact that you're poor. My parents didn't have any money, and I didn't have an adversity score to add to mine, and I worked hard.
That's right. That's right. That's what
the
makes
simple,
it different. Right.
That's the simple end result.
We got a caller on hold here. We got John in Texas. Good morning, John.
Hello, hello, Dr. McCanney. I have a question about hurricanes and their relationship to and the strange physics of spinning disks. I understand that hurricanes, do they have any hyperdimensional or quantum mechanical effects on space or on matter? Because I've seen, heard tell, I read it in David spinning disks, and in David Percy and Mary Bennett's book Dark Moon, that spinning disks have some peculiar physics related to quantum mechanics and hyperdimensional effects. And I've seen, and they have effects like stakes ending up stuck right through trees, as it's like they just been inserted through without making splinters. And
that's due to the high. That's due to the high velocity, but no, there's no quantum physics involved here. It's macro physics. It's very simple, based on the fact that these storms are powered from electrical currents that come from the ionosphere, and you can enhance that, you can diminish it, but there are techniques for diminishing that. And when a hurricane landfalls, what it's doing is shorting out electrically. You can artificially short a hurricane out. In fact, the one that's coming right now, Dorian, is a perfect example of a hurricane that could be shorted out before it ever gets to Puerto Rico. And also, especially as it moves up through the Bahamas, and especially as it moves off to Florida, this is a storm that should never cause any significant damage. And by shorting it out, what you do is you put shorts out, and basically tethered balloons, you short the storm out before it makes landfall. And what happens is you knock the wind out of it, you drop the rain out of it before it makes landfall. But no, there's no special just quantum effect.
John, thank you for the call. We got a bottom of the hour break. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Republic Broadcasting Network depends on listener support of our advertisers and of our sponsors. We'd like to especially thank all of you who have taken advantage of our fundraiser with FrontSite Bonus. Those who are now FrontSite members, please train as soon as possible for your sake and for that of our nation. And please consider sharing your training and what you've learned when you arrive home. Republic Broadcasting Network has to stop promoting this fundraiser on air and on the website in just a few days. Dr. Ignatius Piazza, president of Frontsite, made a gracious exception to his no media rule for us at Republic Broadcasting Network. Thank you, Dr. Piazza. And once you've been to Frontsite, feel free to call your favorite host and share your experience on the air. We can continue this fundraiser without media help, but it'll be totally up to the listeners to spread the information. Please call Dan Sutterfield in Missouri at 573-465-2356, 573-465-2356.
Wednesday, the 28th of August. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. The reports we're getting about central banks buying gold, well, that's not fiction. That's real. If you think you want to have a little gold or a little silver yourself, just go to my website. You'll see at the top of my website what looks like a Christmas gift, a red box with a gold ribbon on it. Just click on that. That's the landing site for Swiss America and Steve Hunt. Steve Hunt will help you figure out what you need to do for you and your family. That would be a good thing. Also on my website, you'll find energy cleaners. Yes, I use mine every night. I'm a pretty active guy. I'll be getting out my 750-pound motorcycle about noon today and going for a pleasant ride here through the Ozark Hills. And yesterday, I had the Kubota tractor out moving gravel. Part of that time I had to use a shovel to move gravel. That's some pretty hard manual labor. Did I go to bed with minor aches and pains last night? Well, I did. I woke up pain-free this morning using my energy cleaner. I had a great night's sleep. I sleep as good as a small child every night. $285, shipping included to American zip codes. Keep in mind, if you're doubting Thomas, I offer a 90-day money-back guarantee. So check out the energy cleaner, the mattress pads that go with it at my website, where you can place your order using PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. You can call my toll-free order line 24 hours a day. Here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. We're visiting with Professor James McCanney. His website's linked to my links page at thelibertyman.com. And, Jim, we got another caller on hold here. We have Elizabeth in New York. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning, John. Good morning, Professor McCanney. I have a question. We know that there's several factors that are affecting our weather right now, besides just the Gulf Stream, the manipulation with the laser satellites and everything. My question is the pole shift. Like, Spain just had a huge hailstorm. And my question is this why we're seeing cold weather where it normally isn't? Is it the pole shift as well?
Well, there's no pole shift going on. And I'm sorry, where did you say there was a hailstorm?
She didn't say. Where was the hailstorm?
Spain. It was Spain.
Spain?
Paul Begley reported on it. It was in Spain.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, here's the issue. The individual weather events, if they appear to be abnormal, typically are within normality. And it's like one event does not prove, there's abnormal weather or weather manipulation. When I look at hurricanes, for example, and talk about, say, Hurricane Michael being a manipulated storm, there's physical things you're going to look at to determine that that's going on, like the eye wall and the things that it does, like going from a Cat 1 to Cat 5 hurricane in 3 hours, which is impossible as it makes landfall. But an individual, like hail in, they've seen hail in Egypt, so it's not, something that's, out of the ordinary individual event. if you start having hailstorms every day in Spain, then you might start looking at something.
I see, but they did also have snow in the Arabian desert.
Yeah, in a place like Atacama in Chile, they might have, or in Chile, Argentina, they might have snow because it's very cold. It's a desert, driest place on Earth, and they may have frost on the ground that turns into crystals. But so there again, it doesn't prove anything, or it's the weather can be pretty extreme, even in places where you typically don't have that kind of weather.
Right, and a follow-up, I'll ask people sometimes, Jim, in a public meeting, how many North Poles are there? And of course, people say one. Well, there's two North Poles. There's true North, which is the axis of the Earth, and there's magnetic North. And people hear about magnetic North moving, and they think, oh no, there's a pole shift. That's not what we're concerned about. Magnetic North moving is not the concern. True North moving, if and when it ever happens, that would be the concern, wouldn't it, Jim?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, we probably go through a complete pole shift of the North Magnetic Pole probably a couple times, probably on average once a month, because of the way the solar magnetic field comes in and changes it. And so poles moving around, or the actual physical pole moving around, it's not like it's in one place. It's a combination of 5 different factors, including plasma magnetic fields, that are shifting all the time. In fact, you can hold a compass during a solar storm and watch the compass move. So anyway, pole shift is a word that's been tossed around too much, and typically people are talking about the magnetic pole, not the physical pole.
That's right.
I get this all the time. Well, the moon's not where it's supposed to be. It always used to be over there. Well, no, the moon has really erratic movements because of its orbit relative to Earth's orbit, both of which are very much tilted, which, by the way, proves that Earth's orbit is not its original orbit. And the same with the moon's orbit is not its original orbit, or like Mercury's orbit is not its original orbit. Something has happened recently to cause it, recently being astronomically recent, to cause it to be very, very different from a normal circular orbit that's in the plane of Jupiter, which should be the basis of our solar system. So anyway, that's
right.
And
Elizabeth, did we answer your question?
Pretty much. He just mentioned Jupiter. Now, I know that there has been things colliding with Jupiter. Is that what you're referring to?
No. Jupiter is gravitationally the basis of our solar system. It orbits the sun in the equatorial plane of the sun. And when the planets, all of the other planets and moons and things, the thousands of things in the solar system, when they're above the plane of Jupiter's orbit, they get pulled down. When they're below the plane of Jupiter's orbit, they get pulled up. So they get pulled into the plane of Jupiter's orbit. And so when you find things like Mercury, which has a very elliptical orbit that is not in the plane of Jupiter, then that's because something happened to it. Or the Earth's moon that is very much out of that plane also, then something happened to it to cause its orbit to be different, because within relatively short time, astronomically, Jupiter's going to pull everything into its plane, the plane of its orbit. So if you find things that are out of that plane, then you can go back and find, you may not be able to find what caused the differences, but you can say that they happened. And in the case of like Mercury, which is very close to the sun, it should be very much a circular orbit in the plane of the bulge of the sun, which is due to gravitational spinning. But it's not. So something recent happened to it on an astronomical scale, meaning that a big comet probably came in and affected its orbit recently, astronomically. I'm not talking about last year recent. I'm talking about astronomically recent.
Right. Elizabeth, thank you for your call. We need to move on, my dear.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we go to John in Tennessee. Good morning, John.
Good morning, John. Good morning, Doctor. I've got a question, but I'm listening on the phone, so for me to hear the answer, please keep the line open. I heard you both say something that brought a smile to my face. Earth has two poles, one magnetic and one, I guess, the true pole. My question is simple. How do you find the second pole? How do you find the pole of the axis? How do we do that?
Well, it's somewhat of an average because it's constantly moving a little bit. So that it's like it's taken as an average, and they typically do it from outer space now. The old explorers walked around with a magnet until they found where the magnetic field didn't go in any particular direction. It comes out of the Earth like the North Pole of a little magnet that you hold in your hand. But what the early explorers did not understand is that there are 5 layers to that magnetic field, and only one of them has to do with the physical Earth. The other 4 layers are plasma. They have to do with the ionosphere and the Van Allen belts and other electrical currents that are up above in space. But as long as we're talking about this, the magnetic North Pole has been moving from a location near Baffin Island over the last number of thousands of years, and it's migrating up to the true North Pole, and it's going to continue to do that. And some people go, "Oh, it's going to shoot past the North Pole, and then there's going to be a pole flip." And there's all kinds of goofiness around this topic. But what's going on is within the last 10,000 years, we had a physical pole shift, which actually did happen, and it was due to the fact that we know what happened. It's very well documented, and something that modern science completely denies. But a large comet, which was captured by Jupiter, came by Mars, removed its ocean and atmosphere, came by Earth, and caused a physical pole shift along with many other effects, and then became the planet Venus. That's very clear scientifically. But thanks to an idiot named Carl Sagan, nobody can talk about this. Fortunately, people are getting back to the understanding this from a physical point of view. And I had an interview a couple of weeks ago with a guy named Mark Gaffney, who's in the process of completing a book. He's doing some very good studies showing that the old North Pole was near Baffin Island prior to the pole shift that occurred within the last 10,000 years. And we have a pretty good time for the dating of that, although it's something that is not the point. The point is that within recent historical time, there is now physical evidence for that pole shift, and the Earth doesn't just jump up and do this by itself. It needs help from outside. So anyway, that's a little bit of extra information.
All right. I understand finding the magnetic pole. What my question was, how do we find the non-magnetic pole? If we have 2 poles, how do we find it, Doctor?
Oh, the non-magnetic pole is a spin. Oh, that's easy. Anybody can do that. Anybody can do that. Just here's an easy way for an amateur to do it. Take a camera with a time-lapse photography, put it on a tripod, and point it north. And you will see over the course of the night the stars tracking out circular orbits around the true north. And the North Star will actually orbit within about 1 degree of true north. But that's a very easy way.
Is that not Ezekiel's wheel within the wheels? Is that not evidence for a flat stationary plane with circular heavens?
No, no. If you want to measure the circumference of the Earth, it's very easy to do. There's about 10 ways to do it. It's like measuring the size of the room you're in to show that the Earth is round. So, the old, of course, view was that the firmament was moving around Earth, which is not the case. The Earth is spinning on its axis.
Okay, one other thing. We look at the face of a clock, an old analog clock, grandfather clock. I suppose that we're coming to the point, because we've been here so long, that we have gone to digital, and we don't understand that even the Bible, John, says that the stars would be for the times and the seasons. Relation to the heavens moving to a face and the hands on an analog watch, even to the point where you have a crystal over the face of the watch. We had to do away with that and put digital numbers and hide truth. So thank you for taking my call.
Okay, thanks for the call, John. This whole flat Earth thing continues to take on a life of its own. A friend of mine is caught up in that, Jim, and apparently there was an anomaly that I can't explain, but it allowed people in Canada to see a city across in the United States, across one of the Great Lakes, for a few hours. My response is, if the Earth was flat, you could see it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, not just when this specific anomaly took place. But people get caught up in these things that are strange and bizarre, don't they, Jim?
Yeah. You can measure the circumference. I heard of some guy, he's going up into an airplane. He's a flat Earth guy. It's like, no, you can measure the circumference of the Earth any place on Earth that you can see an ocean or a lake, like the Great Lakes are a good example, where you see the end of the water as the horizon. And you go up on a hill 600 feet minimum, more if it's available. And with inexpensive equipment you can buy at the hardware store, a level and a protractor and a compass, you can measure the circumference of the Earth. There's 10 ways to do it. That's one way. But it's like measuring the room that you're in. You take a tape measure, you measure it, and here's how big it is. And so you can measure the circumference of the Earth. You don't have to go into an airplane. And so that's the simple answer. People try and make it into something complicated, or, their perception, because it's like in say, calculus. If you're on a curved surface, as you get smaller and smaller, which we're very small compared to the surface of the Earth, it looks flat. But it's only a local appearance. And so people extend that. My favorite one is a guy saying, look at the boat. There's a little teeny boat, and it goes off, and it kind of disappears into the distance. And he says that boat proves that disappearing proves that he's going to infinity. But we'll pick this up on the other end of the break.
Let's do that. We got a break. We'll be right back.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page, and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
back, ladies and gentlemen. Jeremy on Wednesday, the 28th. Visiting with Professor James McCanney. His website is jmccsci.com, linked on my links page at thelibertyman.com. Jim, let's see if we can put this flat Earth fantasy to bed, please.
Here's what Columbus did and a lot of other people. They sat on a hillside and they watched the ships come in. And if a ship is big, I'm not talking about a little power boat or something, I'm talking about a big ship. As it goes out to sea, and it's not very far, you start to not see the bottom of the boat. And as it goes farther and farther, you can still see the boat very clearly because it's a big boat. And all of a sudden, if it goes far enough, it simply dips down below the horizon. And so Columbus would see the sailing ships come in. The first thing you would see is the flag at the top, then the mast, and then the ship, and then finally the bottom of the ship as it got close enough. Your horizon is from a 600-foot hill is about 21 miles. That's about how far away the horizon is. And you can see the roundness of the Earth from a 600-foot hill. That's how simple this is. And the way of measuring that is very simple. You simply take a level and you put it out towards the horizon, and then you measure the angle of the real horizon that you see where the water ends. So you got to do this on a clear day. It only has to be 20 miles away, visibility 20 miles. And you can measure exactly, very, very exactly, with very crude equipment, you can measure the circumference of the Earth. So it's something any idiot could do. It's something any apt third grader could do. So there should not be any discussion. This is something you could measure. So anyway.
Jim, why couldn't I get on top of the Empire State Building with an astronomical telescope and point it at the Eiffel Tower and see it?
Yeah, because it's the Earth is curved. Yeah.
An astronomical telescope can magnify tremendously, even one that you would use in a high school astronomy class would magnify sufficiently to see the Eiffel Tower, which, of course, you could see that if the Earth was flat from the Empire State Building, couldn't you?
Well, here's something you can do. Let's go to, say, some islands. Go down to the Caribbean. Something that this would be a fun thing for flat earthers to do. They could actually have a vacation, have some fun, and do something intelligent. Go down to the Caribbean islands where the islands are close together and drive up into the hills on the Caribbean island that you're on. And then you would start to see other islands appear in the distance. And as you drive back down the hill, you would see those islands disappear. Something very simple. And so then the flat earther would then have a good time, have a vacation, and actually learn something at the same time.
Right. Well, as the Royal Caribbean Cruise Line ship is leaving Port Canaveral next February, we will gradually see the skyline of Canaveral, Port Canaveral, get smaller and smaller, and eventually see the tops of and not see no buildings at all, wouldn't we?
Right, and it doesn't disappear on the horizon. You can still see it. It's big. It just goes under the horizon.
Exactly.
And that's because, and maybe they would make up a story. Well, that's because it's sinking into the ocean and it doesn't exist anymore.
Jim, thank you, sir. Have you back next week.
See you, John.
We got a top of the hour break. We're back with Jeff Nyquist. Stay tuned. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 28th day of August. Prep tip of the day, I want to encourage people to get and read the following book. I'll give the title and the author's name twice slowly. The title of the book is A Little Ice Age Has Started. The author is Mr. Lawrence Pierce, P-I-E-R-C-E. That's Papa, India, Echo, Romeo, Charlie, Echo. I say again, the title of the book is A Little Ice Age Has Started by Lawrence Pierce, available at Amazon.com. We have patient waiting agreement with my friend Jeff Nyquist. Jeff is a gentleman who began a quest more than 2 decades ago to understand, comprehend, eventually become quite expert in the true nature of the international communist threat as it applies to the United States and to the West in general. His website's jrnyquist.com. There's a link at my website at thelibertyman.com. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, John.
Well, I read what you forwarded to me, coming from your private source connected to Hong Kong. Nothing I saw surprised me. It's disappointing, but when the British announced they were going to give up possession of Hong Kong to the Communist Chinese made all these promises that Hong Kong could continue on its merry way with the freedoms that they've enjoyed for so many decades, didn't they?
Yes, they did. And this source I have, I mentioned him before. He contacted me around last Christmas. Well, he actually called me on Christmas Day and told me that there was trouble coming to Hong Kong. So I had a kind of heads up. But he's telling me, he called me last Thursday, and we had a lot of discussions about what's going on there. And, of course, one of the key points is they've begun kidnapping people.
Who's
the
they?
Chinese,
Who's they?
Secret police began kidnapping people in Hong Kong. And they more famously, they kidnapped the employees and staff of this bookstore in Hong Kong, which is notorious for its anti-communist books. And lo and behold, some of these people showed up on communist Chinese television making confessions. In fact, he gave me a link to a YouTube video of one of these Chinese television confessions, and it's really quite pathetic to see. But here's the interesting point: the leaders of the Hong Kong independence movement, they know about these kidnappings. I mean, everybody in China knows, but they won't say anything about it. And that was the tip-off to my source that there was something wrong with the leaders of the movement. And then, lo and behold, the news starts trickling out of China that they have kidnapped relatives of the leaders of the Hong Kong independence movement, and this places that movement under control, because these relatives are hostages of the Chinese Communist government. It's a very dirty way to play the political game, but that's what the communists are doing.
Well, back when we began, I believe what they called it ping pong diplomacy back in the 70s under Richard Nixon, I believe. And when we started opening up to China, and China opened up to the world, and they began manufacturing and becoming a manufacturing and economic powerhouse. What we were hearing 30 years ago was economic development will lead to the collapse of communism. It hasn't quite worked out that way, has it?
No, it is not. They maintain a totalitarian state. Of course, we saw this with the Soviet Union in the 1920s. They also had their own version of this in the Soviet Union, where they opened up and they allowed foreign investment, and capitalists came in to the Soviet Union in the 1920s. It was called the NEP, the New Economic Policy, by Lenin. Lenin said, we have failed to make a communist economy. We don't know how to make a communist economy. We must retreat into state capitalism. And that's really what the system is, ever since. It was, the system was a mix of socialism and state capitalism, or just outright state capitalism. Some could call it mercantilism. That's what the system in China is. Basically, it's a state capitalist, mercantilist system. And the Chinese, just like in Russia, the oligarchs or the billionaires in Russia and China are under control of the secret police. I know from various Russian sources that this is true of all the oligarchs. I knew someone who was a friend of Boris Berezovsky. He said Boris would tell you in private that the KGB recruited him to be a billionaire, and that they didn't, when he fell out of favor with the regime and they wanted all the money back, he fled to England, and he was persuaded they were going to arrest him, so he fled. But these people are under strict discipline. And if they make one misstep, they kill them or they arrest them. And it's the Chinese, it's the same thing.
Right. Well, I've been told that there's about between 20 and 30 families in China that basically control the country and control the wealth behind the scenes. Do you have any follow-up on that?
Well, yeah, those would be Communist Party families that have used their position to acquire wealth, because under state capitalism, somebody has to actually control the wealth. But even those families, whether it's Putin and his oligarch friends, or whether it's the princelings in China, they hold that wealth in trust for the Communist Party, basically, and that if they do something, if they are disobedient to that party, they can lose it all. And of course, being caught with corruption or trying to take money out of China and hide it somewhere, they can get found out for that. And if they are, then that's the end of them. There have been in the past fairly important people, both in China and the former Soviet Union, who have been jailed because of these kind of activities. Michael Khodorkovsky was put in jail for quite a period of time. Boris Berezovsky, of course, fled. Others have been assassinated, blown up. Yeah.
You were gone for 4 or 5 seconds there. You're back. Go ahead.
Oh, gosh, I must have lost the connection. But yeah, they anyway, they will blow up, assassinate, suicide, car accident people who are very rich in those countries who have overstepped a certain line. And the thing is there's no rule book. One of the things they'll tell you is that there's no rule book. Just one day they wake up and, wait a minute, you jailed me? Well, what did I do wrong? Well, you moved money here and this was suspicious. And, the real reason, of course, you don't always know. So it's not always a stress-free kind of job to be a billionaire in China or the former Soviet Union. Because these systems, basically economically, they work the same as they did under communism, but they have these people who have the role of being billionaires, of controlling the money, which they nominally control. They do have control over it, quite a bit of it, but they also can lose control over it, and they can be killed the minute they do something they don't like with that money. They generally have to follow certain narrow guidelines.
Well, that would certainly lead to a very discordant life, living in constant anguish over doing something inadvertently that you didn't intend to do anything wrong. That would not be a very good, healthy life, would it?
No, and they are encouraged to do certain things that are that make them appear more real to the West. But if they overdo it, if they think, oh, they want me to do this, and then they go a little bit too far, then they actually get paranoid. Well, what are you doing? We didn't tell you to do this. And they said, well, yeah, you did. No, we didn't tell you to do that. And that was the case with Boris Berezovsky, of course. And Boris Berezovsky, supposedly committed suicide in his bathroom, in his bathtub or something like that a few years back. And when he committed suicide, I was talking to a KGB defector who knew Boris personally, and I said, well, what do you think? And he said, no. He said, there's no way Boris committed suicide. He said, I've known Boris for years. There's no way. So.
Well.
And
it sounds like we're getting the same thing here that's been going on in Russia for decades with these alleged suicides, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. Well, we are getting closer to their system because, the Obama administration, was a bunch of Marxists. And they were, I believe, I'm quite convinced they were in cahoots with Russia and China. They were working together with them. And if you look at the record of the private meetings between Russian leaders and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and John Kerry, where they would disappear for up to 4 hours at a time, leaving their delegations behind without any report at all on what was said in these meetings, which everyone thought would have something to do with the reason the delegations were there, and then they weren't. You realize that, and there was no translators present. I mean, when they say in the newspapers that Donald Trump met alone with Putin, they each had their translators in the room. There were witnesses, you see. But when these other folks met in the room, they didn't bring translators. Very peculiar protocol to do. And because the Russian leaders, they can speak perfect English. They don't need translators. You know, the translators are there for show. And so it's a very disconcerting thing when you have people with this Marxist background like Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama working as Secretary of State or President and meeting with these leaders, because, and this is where the collusion narrative comes in. They create this collusion narrative when it comes to Mr. Trump, and they paint President Vladimir Putin as some kind of a Christian nationalist. Oh, Putin and Trump are cut from the same cloth. Well, this is just promoting the Russian propaganda game, because Russia wants the West to believe that Putin is this kind of nationalist and defender of Western civilization, because that's part of the deception. And of course, they put that deception on conservatives. They don't need to really deceive the left, because the left is already part of the program of change. They're change agents. They're changing the United States into a socialist commonwealth. So this is it's amazing the way the collusion narrative supports Russian disinformation, at the same time helps the left in the United States appear to be patriotic and concerned with the national defense, when they did nothing but cut national defense and prevent us from rebuilding our nuclear arsenal for the whole 8 years of Obama's tenure.
Right. Well, Obama's gone, and the president's rebuilding the military. That's a good thing, isn't it?
Oh, it's a miracle. I mean, we were in dire straits. Our military was. Everybody knows it. So it's very good. The thing is what's going to happen now next year with the election, and what kind of games are they going to play? I mean, they're coming out being outright socialists, and the school systems have educated the young people to be socialists. So, I've always told people it isn't always a done deal who wins an election anymore, because of what they've done with the young people. They can swing a lot of votes, and they use this demagoguery where they appeal to minorities, and they say, "Oh, if you vote for a Republican, they're going to, take all your benefits away, and they're going to oppress you, and they're racist." They play this racism card to make people afraid of Republicans. And thank goodness Donald Trump, I guess, has polled pretty well among minorities, which is quite, it's quite enraging to the left. They're enraged by that.
It scares the hell out of them, because they know that that's the end game. Once President Trump wins the black vote, they're finished. They know that, don't they?
Oh yeah, they do. They definitely do. So it's, it's a very serious crisis that we have in the media with the lying. It's sort of like you have to master the details. You have to swim in the details, or you have to drown in the lies, because they are telling so many lies. And this lie of Russian collusion has all these antecedent lies, these lies that you have to believe before you can come to that particular lie. For example, you have to believe that communism is dead, and the Soviet Union is now the Russian Federation, which is now led by a nationalist and a Christian who's a right-winger like Mr. Trump, and on these lies go, that the Democratic Party has always been for our defense and has never been in collusion with the Soviet Union, and that all these leaders do not have communist backgrounds like they do, you know.
Right.
And you look at that whole crop of Democratic candidates, and when it comes to issues that are of extreme socialism, like the Green New Deal, they're supporting these things. Well, a person can't be a normal person and support these radical socialist, you know, communizing kind of policies. I mean, all of them support that thing. Isn't that right? Are there any of them that don't support the Green New Deal?
I don't believe there are. If they are, they're about to drop out because they got no support.
Yeah, that party has turned so far left, it's virtually a Bolshevik party. And we have in California here, the Democratic legislature here has tried to make laws, but they were told they couldn't, so that it would be like a communist country. If you left California, you'd have to leave your wealth behind.
Hold that thought. We got a break. We'll be right back. August. We're going on a cruise. It will be fun. It will be romantic if you choose it to be. It'll be educational, informative. You'll meet and talk to people at length that you would never get a chance to otherwise, including myself and Leon Green. We're hoping that Sam Andrews can go. We don't have confirmation on that yet. Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, that's the best of the best. The biggest ship that there is. It's the biggest ship that any cruise line has. And it'll be a great time. We're leaving Port Canaveral Saturday, the 9th day of February, returning a week later on the 16th. Interesting ports of call, great times at sea. The cruise ship is basically a luxury hotel on the ocean is what it is. Get the details at my website at thelibertyman.com, where you can go ahead and start signing up right there. You can call my cruise director if you don't have internet access or want to sign up for the cruise. Call our cruise director, Betsy Murphy, at 636-530-9502. I say again, cruise director Betsy Murphy, her telephone, 636-530-9502. Visiting with Jeff Nyquist, his website's jrnyquist.com. There's a link at my website at thelibertyman.com. Well, Jeff, we're doing our job here, being the watchman on the wall, notifying people what's going on so they can do their own homework, do their own research, and reach their own conclusions, aren't we, sir?
Yes. Yes, we are. About the Hong Kong matter, there is the suggestion by my source that the Hong Kong protests in this series of protests were controlled from the beginning by Communist China. And I asked him why he thought that they would have these protests. And he says because they want to use a storyline that the U.S. is interfering in China's internal affairs if we develop too close of a relationship with the Hong Kong Chinese. And so we'll have to see if this plays out this way.
Well, we do. And we need to give credit where credit's due. Our adversaries, in this case the Communist Chinese, they're very bright men and women, and they understand human nature. They understand how to manipulate human nature. They understand how to manipulate the mass media, don't they, sir?
Yes, they do. The Chinese are very sophisticated. And one thing, I've learned from watching the Russians, and it's true with the Chinese, there are very few. Well, let me tell you what a Cuban American told me, who'd been very active in different organizations, Cuban American organizations. that at one point, 20, 30 years ago, there was only one Cuban-American organization of many that existed that were ostensibly anti-communist, that there was only one that wasn't controlled by the Cuban intelligence service. And that organization was taken over, some 20 years ago. So every single organization, diaspora organization from communist countries, typically is target number one to be infiltrated by those communist countries and taken over from the top within the organization. And so this is also true of the Chinese. It's also true of Russian organizations. But, of course, Russia is ostensibly not an overt communist country, so you don't have this diaspora problem because the Russian organizations all came back to Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union. But with China and Vietnam and Cuba, countries like this, you find this is extremely, it's reported again and again by people from those countries who are knowledgeable. Because it's controlled opposition. It's how a totalitarian regime maintains power. They infiltrate their opposition and they get control of it. So that when you're seeing things against the regime from inside, you have to always look very carefully at what they're doing and what they're not doing. And usually you can figure it out.
Right. Well, it takes a little bit of diligence, a little bit of homework to do this, but it can be done if people choose to. And it doesn't take a tremendous amount of time, does it?
No, it doesn't. And, of course, that's what we have evolving here, potentially, in this country. If they're able to put a communist regime on us, it's going to have this same exact technique. And that's what's so dangerous about the Democrats, being Marxist and getting into the intelligence services. Because the other aspect of this Trump-Russia thing is the fact that the NSA and the FBI were used to spy on American presidential campaigns during an election year. This is the kind of clandestine power, secret power, that the communists use to govern their own countries. And for this to be happening here in the U.S. Is a very, very bad sign. That because they don't. And they don't necessarily have to say, "Hey, we're communists." They take over the NSA, and the next thing you know, you are being watched.
Hold that thought. We have a break. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We have a special promotion going on at Republic Broadcasting. This is a fundraiser for Republic Broadcasting involving the energy cleaner. Mail me a postcard. My address is at my website at thelibertyman.com. We pick a postcard every other Thursday. When your postcard is drawn out, you get to buy an energy cleaner for $215 instead of $285, $70 discount. $200 goes to Republic Broadcasting. You also get a 10% discount on my mattress pads. So get those postcards in, put your name, your telephone number, your email address on there, and when your postcard is drawn, you get to get an energy cleaner for $215 instead of $285. Mattress pads, 10% off. Help us out at Republic Broadcasting and help yourself to get an energy cleaner at a deep discount. It's a win-win situation for everybody. We hope you can get these postcards in soon. Thank you very much.
Republic Broadcasting Network depends on listener support of our advertisers and of our sponsors. We'd like to especially thank all of you who have taken advantage of our fundraiser with FrontSite Bonus. Those who are now FrontSite members, please train as soon as possible for your sake and for that of our nation. And please consider sharing your training and what you've learned when you arrive home. Republic Broadcasting Network has to stop promoting this fundraiser on air and on the website in just a few days. Dr. Ignatius Piazza, president of FrontSight, made a gracious exception to his no media rule for us at Republic Broadcasting Network. Thank you, Dr. Piazza. And once you've been to FrontSight, feel free to call your favorite host and share your experience on the air. We can continue this fundraiser without media help, but it'll be totally up to the listeners to spread the information. Please call Dan Sutterfield in Missouri at 573-465-2356, 573-465-2356. That's 573-465-2356.
All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. J.R. Moore here on Wednesday, the 28th of August. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. We have new images, if you haven't been to my website for a while, new images of continents with different coastlines, new coastlines, and TV shows and movies. They're giving us a heads up. They're giving us a warning. And they're right here in front of us, including the wildly popular trilogy of The Hunger Games, of all things. You want to check out those images. They're right there at my website at thelibertyman.com. If you find, this is our project, by the way, if you find an image of a continent with different coastlines in a movie or TV show, get that image to me. You get your choice of any of my 6 DVDs as a thank you. It's a fun project. We need to keep moving it forward. Also on my website, of course, you'll find energy cleaners for sale. Marvelous healing devices. I use mine every night. I'm a pretty healthy guy. I wake up pain-free in the morning. I have a great night's sleep. I sleep as good as a small child. You can also. Get yourself an energy cleaner. Get a great night's sleep every night. Wake up pain-free like I do. $295 shipping included to American zip codes. The mattress pads that go with them, well, they vary in price depending on what you want, what you need. Twin size, full, queen, king, California king. They're all right there, including a handy travel size. You can place your order at my website using PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. You can call my toll-free order line 24 hours a day. Here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Visiting with Jeff Nyquist. His website's jrnyquist.com. That's jrnyquist.com. Link to my links page at libertyman.com. And if you got a question or comment for Jeff, give us a call at 800-313-9443. Jeff, let's continue, sir.
Yeah. We were talking about the communist methods of controlled opposition. The same thing, if people are wondering about what happened in the Eastern Bloc in 1989, it was in the 1980s. Solidarity. I talked to a number of people out of Solidarity back in the day that were saying, look, the communists have infiltrated Solidarity. We now call ourselves Fighting Solidarity because the communists have moved on. They told me that Lech Walesa, this is way back in the early 90s, that he was a stooge of the secret police. He was well known to be one within the organization. Of course, it since came out in Poland that his code name, I think his code name was Bolek, if I remember the literature. And a major book has come out in Poland about him and his relationship with the secret police, and testimony in court in Poland about his relationship with the secret police. That's just one example. You go to Robert Bukar's film about the changes in Czechoslovakia in 1989 and how the KGB came and had secret meetings with Václav Havel and said, you're our guy, basically. We're picking you. So it's not, things were not as advertised. In the case of Nicolae Ceausescu, he wouldn't step down, so they had to kill him. And the people that were behind the overthrow of Ceausescu were in the Romanian military were connected to Moscow. They were Moscow agents. So the revolution in Romania was done by Moscow, not by the Romanian people.
Right. Well,
so
Ceausescu didn't. Yeah. Right. Ceausescu didn't get the memo. Yeah. Do it our way, or you're toast.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And so he thought, oh, no, I'm going to, yeah. He thought he was going to do it. And, of course, in Bulgaria, it was the revolution was so well managed by the communists. And, of course, nobody pays attention to what happens in Bulgaria. I wrote very briefly for a Bulgarian newspaper where the editor knew the whole game. And he was telling me how, they have a tradition in Bulgaria where the prime minister isn't really Bulgarian. He's somebody who was born in the Soviet Union. And, of course,
Really?
That was the case. That was the case. That's been the case through most of the post-Soviet period in Bulgaria. They're naturalized Bulgarians. And, of course, you had, what's interesting is in Brazil, the Workers' Party in Brazil, after Lula da Silva, they had Dilma Rousseff. Well, there was a controversy in Brazil over whether Dilma Rousseff was born in Bulgaria or not. They claimed that she didn't really have a legitimate birth certificate, sort of like the thing we had with Barack Obama here. They had with Dilma Rousseff in Brazil. So, yeah, it's a typical dodgy sort of communist type thing. I mean, but Dilma Rousseff's family was one of these Bulgarian communist families that supposedly left Bulgaria because they fell out of favor and so on and so forth. But she joined a terrorist cell in Brazil when she was young. She was a Marxist. This was the way in Brazil. The regime wanted to return to democracy. They amnestied all the terrorists and communists, and they let them enter politics. And look what they got. They got the Workers' Party, was in alliance with Fidel Castro. They started to change the country into a socialist dictatorship, and they just stopped it at the very 11th hour in Brazil.
That was close. That's too close for comfort, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, people don't realize how close, how important Bolsonaro is, and how big and important a country Brazil is.
Well, it's a huge country, and they've become a manufacturing powerhouse, and they've become a world player, haven't they?
Yes, they have become that. And, of course, a major partner and ally of America in South America.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, hopefully the Brazilians can maintain some semblance of a republic. What do you think?
Well, now there's this thing over the rainforest burning, and they're blaming Bolsonaro. You see this typical communist thing that whenever anything happens, blame the conservative. He did it. And of course it's the environmentalist kind of hysteria as well. And you've got people, they're making up stories and claiming corruption in Bolsonaro's family. They're causing all kinds of problems for him. But he's got the public support, and he's continuing, and he's got President Trump's support, which is very important. And, Brazil has become a very special partner of the United States in all this.
It has, absolutely. Well, Jeff, we're looking at 14 months. Next week I'll be saying 13 months until the election. The Communist, Socialist, Democrats, Muslims know they're going to lose the presidential bid, despite all their efforts at fraud and manipulation and trying to get rid of the Electoral College, which will all fail. At that point, I believe you share my concern that there's a high likelihood that civil disorder could commence in this country, don't you?
Yes, I would not be complacent at all. I mean, and you, did you learn anything more about this meeting in Chicago that happened in April?
I have not. The best our people could do, our people being the various lettered agencies, was not good enough, and unfortunately, that's where we are. So I don't anticipate learning anything new on that. But there's new information. I'll be meeting with sources over the next week or two to see if I can get any updates from various sources, and of course I'll report those as I get them.
Yeah, it's obviously, the economic part of this is a big determinant of what happens because, people vote their pocketbooks, and the economy has been successful. And one of the problems with the president taking credit for the good economy, which I think he should do, because the markets. We saw what happened when he got elected. The markets went up. They knew that they were going to get a socialist if Hillary Clinton won, and that's always bad for an economy. And so there was a lot of optimism. But the problem is, then they're going to blame him if anything goes wrong, and that's, I think, what they're planning to do. And they're hoping with the Chinese are doing things with the bond market here that indicate they want our economy, to have a bad turn over the next year, because the Chinese communists are determined to get Trump out because they need to maintain what they're doing.
They do. And so it's our job you and I, Jeff, to inform people, educate them, encourage them to actually read books, which the listeners to the John Moore Show actually do read books, and then take action at the local level. Make sure your sheriff is a Constitution supporting sheriff. Your local elected officials are God-fearing men who will do the right thing for the right reasons and support the Constitution as well. We can have a lot of impact at the city and village level and at the county level, can't we, Jeff?
Yes, and that's the thing is people need to understand more generally what the game has been. That there's been this deception that's been going on since Perestroika and Glasnost, and that it's been used to allow the far left to get more advanced positions in our government, in our system, that they've made changes to our system, that the trade with Communist China, for example, is very dangerous. Just like the giving Russia, trading status and getting Russia into the World Trade Organization was a great mistake, but Obama did that. From Obama's point of view, it wasn't a mistake, but this allow countries like China and Russia to trade with us. Their trading companies are not normal companies. They're not normal trading companies. They are recruited agents of their military intelligence and their state security intelligence, and because of that, their business deals have a sinister side to them. They're trying to steal technology. They're trying to get into our banks. They're trying to compromise our businessmen. If they get our businessmen into a position where they can now be partners with them and apply pressure to them, they can then apply political pressure through our financial elite. And this has been their game, for decades. And of course, long ago, our financial elite in the 1920s became involved in the Soviet Union, and that is very compromising. What do you have investments? You have the Rockefellers developed the Soviet oil, and then they lost their investment and thought, well, we really have that investment, and we got to get back in there, and maybe Stalin will change his mind, or maybe Stalin will leave and another person will come in and we'll get our. You look what happened to British Petroleum in this last round in the last couple decades. British Petroleum went in to develop the Caspian oil and the Central Asian oil and the Russian oil. And at one point, the Russians just took away the visas from the British Petroleum partners, and they couldn't even enter the country. And so, as a result, effectively, British Petroleum lost this tremendous investment in Russia that they made, because the Russians simply didn't abide by any agreement. They don't play fair.
No, they don't at all. We got a caller and holder, Jerry in Texas. Good morning, Jerry.
Good morning, Jeff and John. Quick question. If the Chinese tanks our economy and our bond system and what have you, with the amount of money that they've got invested in hard assets, real estate, primarily in the United States, what kind of effect is that going to have on them? Hello?
Yeah,
what kind of effect is it going to have on what?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time here.
if your question, I think, Jerry, if they hurt our economy, how's that going to hurt them? Is that a good summary?
Exactly, especially from what I understand, the Chinese have bought in on a lot of real estate. Not only here, but Canada and other places. That would they be impacted just as much or more so? Remember back, what was it, in the 80s? The Japanese did the same thing. They bought up a bunch of real estate, and then their economy went south, and they actually ended up selling a lot of their assets they had here in the United States for pennies on the dollar.
Jeff, are you there, sir?
Yeah. Well, the real estate market, of course, I think they're investing in real estate because they want something that's going to have value no matter what. And I think that's part of the scheme. But you got to remember that the Chinese, they don't make their investments for money. They make it for strategic reasons. Because they're communists, they don't really respect market forces. They want to have control over those forces themselves. If that makes any sense.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, but if they can't hold on to it for strategically, that's going to impact them also, isn't it? Financially. I'm having a hard time. I'm having a hard time.
Let me help out here, gentlemen. Jerry, the Russians and the Chinese murdered tens of millions of their own people to achieve their goals. They're willing to sacrifice whatever needs to be sacrificed to achieve their goals. And if it hurts their economy short term to achieve their goals, they in fact will do that. Do you have any response, Jeff?
Yeah, if they own the world, it doesn't matter if they're broke. They can make it up by taking it out of somebody else's hide. So they will do anything to get their objectives. Yeah, John is exactly right. And their economy is weak. I mean, their financial economy could collapse because of the way they play these games.
Okay. Well, I guess. I've got to think about that. I've been thinking about it, and I still can't get my mind wrapped around the whole scenario. But thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, well, these questions and the answers do not fit our Western logical minds, do they, Jeff?
Oh, no, they don't. It's a different kind of logic altogether.
It's very, what would the word be, dystopian? I mean, bizarre, freakish, psychosis, compared to our Western logic and way of thinking and way of doing things. Here's our last break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcast. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Jeff, this hour has just flown by as always, and What's new with you before we wrap it up here? You got a new article published at your website by any chance?
Well,
Hello, Jeff.
Yeah, I've been. Yeah, can you hear me?
Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. I have been working on actually a new website. I'm not sure I'm going to preview exactly what day I'm going to put it up there. I was thinking of having it available this morning, but I just wasn't confident yet that it's ready. But I've been working on some things. I mean, part of the difficulty with writing about these subjects is how to say it simply so that people can understand it, that don't have the background. You know, that's just a hard thing to communicate. And so that's been the challenge. And, of course, I've written an essay on Diana West's book, her new book, The Red Thread. And that's what my essay is about. I've got another essay up there which is about the sort of crisis of Western civilization, too. So, yeah, people are going to see that pretty soon. It's the essays are basically done, but I haven't published them yet. So if people want to stay tuned.
This new website, that will be the same address, or you're going to do away with one and start a new one?
It will be connected, linked to my jrnyquist.com. It will be linked to it, and I hesitate to, I haven't decided. I mean, I might just, I'm unhappy with my web provider for my site, so I'm having to rebuild the whole site from scratch and shifting it over. It's sort of technical, and like, do I really want to do that? Because I will lose some content, and I'm a little worried about that. But
right.
But that's what I've been up to on that front.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. Well, everything will work out, and you'll be up and running. You'll keep us posted as this moves forward, won't you, Jeff?
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you too good. Could you
keep us posted as these changes come about?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you very much. And what words do you want to leave our listeners with this week, sir?
Okay, thank you.
I say, what word do you want to leave our listeners with? Any special words this week?
Oh, yeah. I guess the special words are, with this Hong Kong, revolt, is be aware that sometimes these anti-Chinese or anti-Russian movements are under control of the secret police. So watch them carefully. Make sure that you're not buying everything you see. I mean, they could be honest, and then again, they might not be. So just to let people know how that works.
All right. Well, people need to be alert and stay on their toes, don't they?
Yeah, stay on your toes.
Okay. Jeff, thank you, sir. We'll have you back next week. That's it for the day. Get the medical supplies, the energy cleaner, essential oils now while you can. Your firearms ammunition. Never, ever good for guns. Please do a fun, safe, productive day. God bless America.